With the NFL draft behind us and mini camps getting ready to start, we are going to start going into the deep side of Dynasty content. Of course, with Dynasty football, it never ends in the NFL and it never ends for us. We obviously want to put out some great content to help you guys with your upcoming season. And of course, always thinking the future. So these are some players. These are my 10 that I believe you should absolutely go after this offseason. All right, we're going to start off with the quarterback position. Now, I've got 3 players that I believe are going to be some great assets to consider buying this offseason before the season really starts going. Now, with that said, I've got 2 quarterbacks that are probably going to be more geared towards win now teams. So if you're a team that is in a rebuild status or you're kind of unsure where you really should be going after in this quarterback 3 that I've got, I would consider one an absolute surefire. The other 2, again, if it's an aging team, you might want to hold off if you're trying to rebuild. Now, the first quarterback I'm going to mention is going to be Dak Prescott. Look, last season he finished quarterback 19, and a lot of it is because he missed 8 games. He missed half the season last year due to a torn hamstring. Now, Dak has been dealing with some injuries the last few years, and that's not something he dealt with early on in his career, but now he's been kind of a quarterback that you're not sure if you're going to get the full 17 games out of him. So there's a little bit of risk behind that. With that said, though, with the addition of George Pickens coming in from Pittsburgh after that trade happened, Dak has 2 really good, amazing wide receivers to throw to. And then, of course, you still have Ferguson. And then we'll see about the running back trio that's going to end up happening for him. With that said, though, in those games that he had really 2 viable quarterbacks, I think a lot of people forgot he was averaging over 20 fantasy points per game. So Dak has the potential to be that type of quarterback again. He should easily be a top 10, potential top 8 quarterback in fantasy, but he's right now being ranked based off of Fantasy Pros at quarterback 19 this upcoming year. And I don't think that is true at all. I get it in Dynasty, age matters. But right now, if you are trying to win and you need that second quarterback if you're in a super flex, or maybe you need that starting quarterback, Dak is a really good option. Another aging quarterback, and he's not as old, it's going to be Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield is not getting any of the love, especially in the rankings I've been seeing. Right now, he's been averaging a rank of quarterback 15. I get there were a couple new quarterbacks that came in the offseason with the draft and things like that, but realistically, I'm not putting Cam Ward ahead of him. I'm not putting Shadir, or really any of these quarterbacks that just came off of this past draft. Baker, who finished last season, I think a lot of people forgot, quarterback 4. The year before that, when he first started with the Buccaneers, quarterback 10. So in his career so far with the Bucs, I know it's only been 2 years, but he has been a top 10 fantasy quarterback, but he's being ranked outside of that. Kind of ludicrous to me, especially when he still has Mike Evans. He still has, Chris Godwin. Now he's got Jalen McMillan, who I think is a really good receiver. I like Trey Palmer. And then, of course, they drafted Egbukwa, who is another really solid wide receiver. So he's got the core. He's got Otten. He's got Bucky Irving. He's got Rashad White. Like, this offense is amazing. Baker should even this year, I think I don't know quite quarterback 4, but easily a top 10 quarterback just being looked outside of that. So if you're needing that second quarterback or a starting quarterback, he's up there a little bit in age, not quite obviously like a Dak Prescott, but he is someone you should absolutely consider getting on your roster this offseason. And the last quarterback I'm going to mention he's got on the younger side is Bryce Young. A lot of people wrote him off last year, and then all of a sudden he started to show up. Right now he's being ranked quarterback 24. Not really quite sure why he's ranked so low, especially when it comes to Dynasty rankings. Right now, for me, I think he's ranked a lot higher. And I'll drop my rankings soon. But Bryce Young is absolutely a quarterback you want to put on your roster. And you probably get him at a decent price. His age will help make it a little bit more expensive for you to grab, but realistically, the age, I think, is a benefit for a reason why you want to grab him. He still has Adam Thielen, right? He's got Xavier Legette. He's got the new wide receiver, McMillan, who I think is going to be a really great star in this upcoming year and going forward. So he's got really 2 viable wide receivers. I still love Sanders, their tight end that they grabbed last season. He's got some great running backs with Dowdle, Hubbard. So again, this offense looks really good. I know last season he was benched briefly in the beginning of the year. Then he came back, and if you actually look at his, really the end of the season, the last 8 games or so from week 10 and beyond, he was averaging 20 points per game. Like, amazing stuff. So for me, the fact that he's being ranked really in the 20s, I think is an absolutely steal for anyone who goes after him. Now, jumping into the wide receiver position, I've got 3 receivers that I really like this year. Just because of opportunities and I think cost. Roman Wilson is going to be my first one. Look, the Pittsburgh Steelers traded away George Pickens. They've got DK Metcalf, who they just signed, who traded for and signed a big contract. Roman Wilson is their expected wide receiver 2 going forward. Now, he was obviously playing hurt last year, so he didn't really show off his ability coming from Michigan. I think Wilson has that ability. I'm not expecting a lot, so I'm not going to give up a lot. I think you probably get like towards the end of a second round or maybe a beginning of a third round to get Roman Wilson. People might actually charge now a little bit higher because of what's going on in Pittsburgh, because of the lack of receivers. But I think, again, the opportunity is going to be there. Now, there is obviously a quarterback situation you've got to figure out with Pittsburgh. So, not expecting Roman Wilson to be a starter on your roster, but he's definitely worth grabbing because, again, there's opportunity for him. He should see a lot more opportunities with, obviously, Metcalf being the main target. And realistically, I don't know if Robert Woods is going to outpace him. Calvin Austin, I don't know. I think Roman Wilson ends up being the wide receiver 2 that they're hoping for, and he's being talked about quite often this offseason. So, again, another really, really good buy. Another receiver I like is going to be a little bit older receiver is Calvin Ridley for the Titans. Look, he's right now ranked wide receiver 48. I guess it's a little too hard to rank him just because you're not sure what this offense is going to look like. But he's got a new quarterback, Cam Ward. I think is actually going to be amazing going into the NFL. He's definitely going to be a better prospect than what Will Levis was. And Calvin really still finished pretty strong last season. He was wide receiver 28 with the horrendous Will Levis, unfortunately. So give him a better quarterback. I think you can easily get a top 20 wide receiver, easily. A wide receiver 2 that you should put into your mix on your roster. Again, the age is a factor, so I wouldn't overspend on him. But I think because of the name, he might still cost a little bit. I think you can actually get him at an absolute steal because this was his worst performance in fantasy points per game. He had 11 last season, and realistically, he's about a 15 to 16 point type of receiver when healthy, and of course with a decent quarterback. And I think Cam Ward's going to absolutely upgrade this offense, and he's going to give him an opportunity to actually do that. I think he could probably get into the 13, 14 points per game, and again, I think finishing at the wide receiver 20 or better mark. So right now, being ranked wide receiver 48, I am absolutely jumping on the opportunity to get him in most of my leagues. And the last receiver I want to mention is going to be Jawan Jennings. Jawan Jennings right now is being disrespected because I think, one, a lot of people are nervous of what this 49ers offense is going to look like. You've got a really injury-riddled Christian McCaffrey. You've got Deebo Samuel gone. Brandon Ayuk, we're not sure what's going on with his injury and coming back. No one really knows, but I think those are things that you should consider why you want to get Jawan Jennings. Right now, he's being ranked wide receiver 50. He finished wide receiver 24 last season. He was amazing in the opportunities he was given, even with another year with Brock Purdy, which I think is awesome. He is going to be the wide receiver 2 and could end up being the wide receiver 1. A lot of it has to do with the fact that Brandon Ayuk might end up being traded. There's still these rumors. I think people are still trying to get these rumors going with Brandon Ayuk going to Pittsburgh. I don't think that's going to happen because I don't think they wanted to pay George Pickens. They're not going to have 2 high costly wide receivers like Metcalf or Ayuk. But there's still a team that may end up going after Ayuk. We're not sure what the injuries look like. I think the 49ers really didn't want to pay him. And I think right now, Juwan is going to be the beneficiary of this. I think he still has a good rapport with Brock Purdy. I do think Christian McCaffrey is still a benefit when he comes back. And again, going forward, Jennings could end up being a possible top 25 wide receiver. Again, you're telling me a wide receiver 2/flex player I can get at a pretty cheap cost, maybe a third rounder. I'm absolutely taking that every single time. So again, really good prospect. I would absolutely grab him. Now, jumping into the running back position, I mentioned Christian McCaffrey, and I'm going to mention him again. Speaking of that 49ers offense, Christian McCaffrey is a must need for this offense to have anything going forward into 2025. Brock Purdy needs him. The offense needs him. They got rid of Jordan Mason, so obviously they felt like there were other good options on their backups with Christian McCaffrey. Right now, he finished RB18. I get it. Or not even finished. He ranked RB18 going into the season because of the injuries, the age, things like that. I think for me, this is how I feel. Christian McCaffrey did get hurt this past season. I think they overestimated the injury, and there was a lot of uncertainty what was going on. I think people got hurt because they drafted him pretty early in most drafts. So a lot of people probably were ready to get rid of him at a cheap cost. And again, we're talking Dynasty here, so you understand you're probably going to have him for maybe 2 or 3 more years. When he's healthy, which he was the last few years, he's averaging a stupid amount of 22 points per game. 22 points per game. He's one of the best running backs in the game, one of the best fantasy backs and fantasy players, period. Yes, health is a factor. Yes, that's something you've got to consider. But at the cost of what you could possibly get him for, he is a nice little rental for 2 or 3 years. Again, if you're in a win now mode. And speaking of win now modes, another running back you've got to try to get is Derrick Henry. Right now, he's being ranked running back 17 or so because of his age and things like that. And a lot of people are concerned with that. Look, the guy just put up an RB4 season, had 16 touchdowns on the ground, 2 in the air. One of his best seasons he's had in a long time. He doesn't look like he's slowing down. And I don't think they actually are going to overuse him this upcoming season. You still have Lamar Jackson, right? They're going to use their other backs. I don't think Derrick Henry is going to be pounding it every single game. With that said, you do have to understand the age is going to play a factor when it comes to trying to trade for him. I'm not going to trade a young stud for him, but if I can trade maybe a second round pick next year, depending on how my season's going to end or potentially end, I'm trying to win now. I think that's a risk I'm going to take. Maybe another player in a third, or, you try to kind of figure some things out, play around with it a little bit. Maybe a first, depending on if that is the one piece you're absolutely needing to win. And you've got obviously some young players around it. But Derrick Henry is a must grab this offseason. Now, the last position I'm going to mention is going to be the tight end position. Isaiah Likely, speaking of the Ravens, is another great option to grab. He's right now being ranked tight end 17, and this is more of a future move, right? You want to grab him possibly now before it becomes a bigger piece in this offense. They're going to run a lot of 2 tight end options. He plays still really well, even with Mark Andrews in there. And of course, when Mark Andrews is out or possibly hurt, which has been something that has happened in the last few years, Isaiah Likely becomes a top 8 tight end in fantasy. And he has the potential. He's got 3 years into the league. He's got really familiar with this offense. He's a really great option outside of Mark Andrews and Zay Flowers, and even Bateman, who's actually become a really good option for Lamar Jackson in this offense. But I like Likely because the fact that I could probably get him at a good price because people still know Mark Andrews is there, who is a top 10 fantasy tight end. And we don't know how much longer, but he's still there. So I'm going to grab him, put Likely on my roster. Especially if you're in a tight end premium, you want to try to put him there because he's got another 6 to 8 years, hopefully, there, and especially taking over Andrews, depending on what happens this season. And the last tight end I'm going to mention is Pat Freiermuth. I love Muth in fantasy. He's been a great tight end, but he's being completely disrespected in a lot of rankings. Right now, he's being ranked in tight end 20. Last season, he finished as tight end 9, and that was with a lot of inconsistency at the quarterback position. Well, let's be honest, though, there are still some quarterback inconsistencies and worries going for the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2025. Do they get Aaron Rodgers? Do they have Mason Rudolph as their starter? Maybe it's the rookie Will Howard. We don't know what's going to happen. With that said, the ball is still going to be thrown in the air. And right now, with Pickens out, you've got Metcalf, Freiermuth, and then maybe Washington as far as their other tight end. They're going to play a lot of 2 tight ends, but I like Freiermuth a lot. I think people overlooked him because he's not that sexy tight end that a lot of people are used to, but he's been consistent every single year, and he's a great option in this Pittsburgh offense. They love throwing him the ball. With that said, really good option to go after. Again, you're not going to have to spend a super large amount for him, and I think because of the uncertainty at the quarterback position, he is slightly getting a little bit older. I think you get Freiermuth at a really good cost, and he's a great option going forward. So that is my top 10 as far as options go for the Dynasties, players you should go and trade for. Now, of course, I'll come up with a video and talk about some players I'm avoiding, maybe trying to get rid of, that I think you should as soon as possible, especially when some of these names are going to be some big names I'm going to mention. And obviously stay tuned for that. I will be dropping obviously some Dynasty rankings. And of course, we're going to start getting ready to mock draft season real soon. So again, if you have any questions, hit me up in the comments down below. If you are new to the channel, make sure you guys are subscribed. Hit that like button while you're at it, and I'll see you guys next time.